Hello, so I'm just going to walk you through the Pathways Max for Live device. This is a sample-based device, so the first thing we'll do is drop a sample right here into the center. So I'm going to drop a kalimba sample. Sounds like this. Great, so we can see we have a spectrogram now of the kalimba sample. And then how we use this device is we draw little sketches over it, and then we'll have a playback based on that drawing. And you can draw multiple sketches. So here, to create a new sketch or layer or path, press this button here. And you're presented with a few more controls, and the ones over here are for the drawing, and it controls things to do with the playback. And the controls over here are for actually drawing a path. So let me demonstrate. I have on a free draw tool now, and I'll just draw some line, and then I'll press play. And there's a little playhead playing here. Great. So we created one drawing, and if we want to do another one, we press the plus button again, and now we have two tabs here, and they're for the two different layers. So now I can use go to the circle tool, and I'll do a little circle here on the second layer. And I'm going to solo that so we just hear this layer. And then I'll unsolo it so we hear both of them. Okay, doesn't sound so great, but you get the idea so far. Let me delete this layer for now so we can just focus on one layer and understand the device better. So I'll just briefly mention what each of these drawing tools does. This top drawing tool allows us to zoom in and offset the view, and it works much like the Ableton view, where you drag down and move left to right. Okay, the next one is allows you to drag an existing drawing. So, and then the next tool gives you two different transform modes. So the first one is resize, so you can just drag and resize your drawing. And the other one is rotate, so you can kind of rotate the drawing too. Okay. This fourth one we're familiar with, we can draw. And when you keep drawing, it keeps adding more to your path. So let me demonstrate. I'll clear this. And then I'll draw a line. And then I'll draw some more right here. And more, and more, and more. And then I'll even draw a right to left, going back. And even this. So yeah, you just keep adding more, and then it just makes the path longer for the playhead. All right, I'll get more into how that plays back in a moment. Let's continue with all these drawing tools. So then below that we have the line tool, and the line tool just draws lines like this. If you hold Shift, it locks to certain angles. And then for the line tool and the next two tools, there's a kind of a trick. If you hold, well, it's not a trick if you read the description, but if you hold Control or Command, either one, and if you hold that and you let go, it will lock. It will quantize the number of points. Because actually, if you look into any of these drawings, and let's zoom in, they're actually just a bunch of points. And the playhead is just going through all the points. And okay, I guess I'll go into this section a little. And we can see here in the length, that's saying how long it will take a playhead to get through the whole drawing. So length is set to 1 bar now. So now every bar, it repeats. I'll make it a bit more clear. So here's a circle. And it'll take 1 bar to go around that, and we can have a clock. So yes, you can see it took 1 bar, and if we turn it to 2 bars, now it takes 2 bars. Okay, so just to break that down, it takes 2 bars for a playhead to go to every one of these points in a drawing. Now, I'll go back to this whole control command thing. When you hold control or command, while you draw a line or a circle or any shape, and you let go, what it does is it makes sure that the number of points that you just drew was of an equal division, or of to the power of 10, I believe. And the reason why it does this is because your number of points are divided by the length. So if you drew one line here and one line here, and let's say you wanted it actually to play these both at the exact same length, like it's 2 bars and you want this one to be 1 bar and that one to be another bar. Well, they're both a little bit off from each other, but quite close in the size. So if you held control or command, it will make sure that these are the same number of points. A similar sized line or any bigger one is an equal division. That way you can divide the length into kind of more equal divisions, so you can have more equally divided rhythms. So if you want a clean 8th note or a clean 16th note rhythm, that's what that's for. I hope that makes sense. Check out the manual or reach out to me if it doesn't. It's the trickiest part of the device to understand. Okay, moving on from that, we have the circle, or more like ellipse. And if you hold down shift, it's circles. And if you hold down control or command, it's the same thing. It quantizes the number of points, just like the line. And you have a couple of more options. Oh, I missed one thing for the line. And all these, there's a density parameter. And that just says how many dots are in this area. So if I did a line like this, we see it's quite densely populated, but I turn the density really low. Now we just get a few points in that line. And yeah, so it's the same thing for the circle. If I turned it pretty low, we'd get kind of a really dotted, or now it's a square. We get a really dotted square with a low density. And then I'll turn it up really high and do a triangle, and we get a really high density point triangle. Okay, then we have a sine wave. It still has the same control and shift thing going on. The shift locks it to a clean looking sine wave. And then you have more options here besides density. You also have cycles, so we can change the frequency of our sine wave. We can change the phase, offset, the starting phase. So yeah, those are some things you can do. And then the bottom one's the eraser tool. So you can erase and set the size of it. Great, okay. So now through that process, and let's see what we got going on here. So through that process, now we've come to start to introduce this top section, which deals a lot with how the different playheads are created. Because for each path, you can have more than one playhead. For example, right now, let's turn this down. We have it takes a playhead 1 bar to get through the number of points, right? But it's also creating a playhead automatically every bar. So because of that, we only have 1 playhead. However, if we had it create a playhead every half note, half a bar, then we're going to end up with 2 playheads because it's creating one every half a bar, and they take 1 bar to finish. Okay. Then this parameter here, voices, says how many voices is the max that can be on at one time. So if we wanted to cap this number, even though we create, let's say every 16th note, we create a playhead, but it lasts for a bar, that means we're going to create a lot of playheads. But now we're capping it to 4. And so it just stays here because it keeps voice stealing, essentially. Now let's jump to this corner over here. This will randomize the point that we start at. So right now it always starts at the first point, but this will give more randomness to that. Okay, and then these two, let me turn it down a little. Then these two parameters here randomize the rate and length respectively. So I'll randomize those. And now we get much more unpredictable behavior. Okay, and then the last one we're seeing, oh no, there's another one, the direction. So let me turn all this randomness off and go back to 1 bar at a time. Now we have different directions, so we can do it the path backwards, we can do it a 4 back, and a back 4. Okay, now the last one is the trigger. So right now it says auto, so automatically it's triggering a playhead. But if I turn this to a MIDI note, like C3, we see that the rate grays out. That's because it's no longer automatically creating a playhead at a certain rate. Now we have to send in a MIDI note C3 to play it. So let me just go to C3. Okay. And arm the track, and then there we go. Now every time I press C3, it triggers the playback. So you can assign it to different MIDI notes and different drawings to different MIDI notes to do more of a playing approach. So now I'll go over the rest of these at the top. So first, you see you can actually title your layer. Hey, and now it's labeled. So if I create another one and it says hi, then we have one hey, one hi, hey hi. All right, and then as you saw, when I press this X here, it deletes a layer. This play button doesn't appear until you draw a path to play. And if I erased all this, then, oops, there must be a point somewhere, so I'll erase the whole thing. So I erased it all with this button that clears it, and now the play option has disappeared until I draw again, and it reappears. And this allows us to start and stop the playback for that particular layer. Let me go back to automatic. Okay, then this button solos the layer, and this one duplicates it. So if I had this at an octave higher, and then I duplicate it. Now there's a hey and a hey dash 1. And the hey dash 1, I'll do 2 octaves lower. So now one's low. I'll even do it kind of off, so it's really weird. Okay. Then I'll delete it. Okay, so that's these buttons in this section. Then we have down here the audio parameters for the actual playback. So as you saw, I have pitch here. Okay. Now let's talk about this y-axis. So, okay, let's talk about what's going on here, because it wasn't explicitly said, but it's more intuitive. So, wherever the point is, wherever the playhead is, it plays that piece of audio in the sample. And and so the x-axis, the horizontal position, is the position in the sample. You know, if I had a line like this, it's just playing the audio on the position corresponds to what the playback position corresponds to what we see. And it's the same thing for the filtering, so that the filtering corresponds to the y-axis, so that it matches this spectrogram here. So if I turn the filter width low, and the filter width we can see corresponds to the line height. So if I turn the filter width down and I move this line, we can see and hear that it filters kind of according to the spectrogram. Now, that's if y-axis mode is in filter. But if we turn y-axis mode to panning, a different thing happens. Now the y-axis doesn't do anything with the filter. Instead, we set the filter cutoff right here. And now the y-axis corresponds to panning. So if I put this here, it's all the way to the right, and if I put it down here, it's all the way to the left. And that way we can do things like panning related drawings instead. So for stereo space, now it's going to go from left to right. And then you can do kind of more intricate things with panning. And set the filter statically. When y-axis mode is in filter, the line height doesn't correspond to filter width anymore. That's only when it's in filter mode, so I changed it back now. And when we're in filter mode with the y-axis, then we set panning statically, but we have a little panning spray parameter here, so we can spray the panning and have it randomly pan to get a bigger stereo space. I'll create more voices so we can hear that. Okay, now another big thing about the device is how it's playing back. So, because usually the speed of playback corresponds to pitch, but as you can see, we're having very different pitches and speeds, sorry, and we're maintaining the pitch. In fact, we can even, as you can see here, and in fact we can even just freeze at one point in the sample. And that's because we're doing a playback mode method called phase vocoder, and it's a spectral or FFT playback mode. But I gave you another option because this has a very spectrally sound, which can be cool for a lot of sounds, but maybe you'd also want the sound of the time domain so you can get really clean transients. And so there's another mode called grain mode, and that gives you three grains that have a very short grain size set here, and the grain size and the grains just play back right where the line is. So yeah, now you can get a cool like grain sound and set the grain size here. So that gives. So now I'll just compare them with like a line, so you can kind of really hear. So here's the grain playback, and here's the FFT. I'll turn the filter width all the way up so there's no filtering. So yeah, they have very different sounds. Some have strength and weakness depending on the situation. So you just decide what works for you. The grain, keep in mind the grain playback mode is a bit higher CPU because it requires 3 voices. instead of 1. And there's a bit more going on. So it's just a little bit cheaper to use the FFT mode. And then here we have filter width, of course, and the Q. And then you have your pitch, like I said, and a fine tuning for the pitch and the gain. Great. And then overall you have a transposition for all of the layers. So if you had, lots of different tunings in the layers, this will transpose all of them together. Great. Otherwise, yeah, I think that's it. So reach out if you have any questions or issues, and yeah, otherwise enjoy the device.